Let's go ahead and bring in our next guest. Erin Knott joins us now. She's the executive director for the Equality Michigan organization. Erin, thank you so much for being with us here on the MegaCast.
Thank you. Good morning. It's great to be here.
For those not familiar with your organization, fill us in.
Equality Michigan is a nonprofit organization that serves the LGBTQ plus community, so the lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer plus community here in the state of Michigan. We have what I like to call two silos within the organization. You have the political arm that works to elect pro-equality candidates up and down the ballot, and works towards passing pro-equality legislation, so legislation that impacts and betters the lives of the LGBTQ plus community. But we also have our Department of Victim Services, and that is staffed with a team of professional employees that provide 24/7 crisis services to members of our community that experience some form of trauma. So could be discrimination, could be harassment. Far too oftentimes, though, it is an act of violence, and we have, again, a team ready to provide, wraparound services, help with the legal system, the medical system, connect to counseling services. Again, anything that a victim would need to get them the help that they need so that they can get back on their feet.
Well, I do have family members that are gay, and I remember finally being able, they had a wedding a couple years ago after the Supreme Court ruling, and they quickly got married because they were afraid that it would be overturned. And people don't understand this is about more than just that piece of paper. There are so many legal issues behind your marriage certificate, such as insurance. And if one of your loved ones, they may be sick in the hospital, and you need that legal binding agreement that allows you to visit them in the hospital. There are so many things behind that. So as someone who has a family member that is a part of your community, I want to say thank you for everything that you and your team members do. But I also wonder, what's it been like for your organization and for members of your organization during the pandemic?
Yeah, so, we had to, just like everybody, quickly shift gears, going from a work environment to working at our dining rooms, just like I'm sitting here right now, and that was a model that I'm used to because I've been working remotely now for the past 15 or so years, and we serve people across the state of Michigan. So we have a physical space in Detroit. However, we are constantly on the ground and out in communities, connecting people to services, building political power and support amongst our community to do organizing and to put pressure on the members of the legislature. So I think the biggest items that we had to adapt to was, how do you connect with folks that, I just watched the last segment, you now have parents that have their kids at home and people that aren't used to working, from their dining rooms. And, how do you then engage them and connect them when they're not used to just all the changes that we've been going through for the last year?
Erin, one of the things that really concerns me when you think about some of these kids that are just starting to come to grips with who they are, but they feel like they need to hide it from their parents, or maybe they're in a community that doesn't widely accept the differences in our bodies and who we are. And now they're stuck at home and they're stuck in those environments. So are you seeing an increased need for help or mental health services from some of these individuals, especially teens?
So we at Equality Michigan, we support a vast network of community centers. So centers that, primary purpose is to serve the LGBTQ community within a particular region or city. And, looking at the Out Center in the greater St. Joe Benton Harbor area, they have an outstanding program where they predominantly work with teens and younger LGBTQ community members by way of the school system. So we were able to provide services with them so that they were utilizing tools such as social media to connect to those students so that those students didn't feel left behind in this kind of current remote space that we're in.
That's so awesome. Erin Knott with us here on the MegaCast. She's the executive director for Equality Michigan. we do have here in Oakland County, Dave Coulter is openly gay. When you have someone in his position openly gay, what type of signal does that send to the overall community? Does it help your organization and your mission?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I did an interview the other day and I was asked, what has the influence of pop culture been on advancing, acceptance and changing hearts and minds, regarding our community? And I think that it has a definite impact, and local elected officials do as well. I serve on the Kalamazoo City Commission, and I remember when I ran in 2015, people that didn't know me, I'd knock on their door to introduce myself and make my pitch, and I was then immediately tagged, the gay candidate. I've served a couple of years as vice mayor, and I no longer have that label because people see me as the woman that's getting things done, the woman that they can call when they have a nuisance property owner, nearby. Or in Kalamazoo, unfortunately, we're dealing with a gun violence crisis right now, and folks know that I'm serious about that. So that label has left. But when you're looking at kids in my community or in, Oakland County, folks look up to us, and they realize that they too can run for office. And it's just so much more accepting than it was when I came to Kalamazoo 20 some years ago.
I love that you say that, and I will say I'm not proud to admit this, but I remember when my brother was coming out to say that he was gay. I'm from a very small town in Ohio. We didn't openly know anyone in the gay community, and my brother was very popular. He was like, homecoming king and all these things. And when he came out, it takes a lot of courage. And
Yes.
when you really stop, and I think the best gift that we can give one another is when we open hearts to of each other. And I think a lot of that has to do with just starting with conversations. And one thing my brother said is, why would anyone want to be an outcast to society? I am who I am, and I'm proud to be who I am. And he is a beautiful soul, and he is the most loved soul, and he's an extremely talented soul. But I will say his talent, he's 2 years above us. Tyler, I have a twin sister.
Okay.
He stole all of our talent. So there was nothing left,
no.
Erin, for my twin
Too
sister
bad.
and I, because my brother can do it all. He's an amazing person, and we love, he's such a vital part of our family and our community as well. But these conversations and meeting people are so important. So how are you doing that in the middle of a pandemic when people can't get to know you heart to heart in, an open environment?
Sure. Well, I mean, again, we've really utilized social media, whether it's Zoom or, applications such as Facebook, Twitter, just to get the word out and to connect with folks. But there have been items recently that has caused our organization to engage, and we've relied on the media to connect our community and to get the word out. You started our conversation by talking about marriage, and far too often, folks, now that we can get married legally across the country, I will get myself into a playful discussion, an argument about, married on Saturday, fired on Monday, because the state of Michigan does not protect the LGBTQ community as it relates to discrimination in our state civil rights law. And so this is a gap that has existed for over 38 years. And at Equality Michigan, our volunteers and board members and staff, we use this as an opportunity each and every day when we're talking to the community, both allies and members, to talk about the need to amend the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to explicitly include sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. And there's recently been an opportunity for me to lift this up, particularly in Southwest Michigan, and to have these conversations. And, the phone lines start ringing, people start emailing, and they want to know, how can we get law involved to finally make change happen at the Capitol?
So if I can back you up just a little bit, because you're talking about the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act of 1976, and I thought it did include your sex as well. Can you fill in the gaps for us right now? Because I feel like there are a lot of people who don't understand this doesn't include you.
That's correct. Sex is prohibited. Sex discrimination is prohibited in the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. And Equality Michigan back in 2017 and 18 asked the Michigan Civil Rights Commission to interpret the definition of sex to include sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. They agreed with us and they provided that interpretation. And I believe right now there are 50 some cases of discrimination that are actively being investigated by the Department of Civil Rights here in Michigan. That all being said, depending on where you live and who you work for, there are far too many members of our community that don't have protections. So I like to tell folks, my partner and I, we live in downtown Kalamazoo. There are many municipalities in Kalamazoo County that provide a non-discrimination ordinance that states we can't be fired, kicked out of our housing, or denied services at a local coffee shop. But there are also far too many communities just 3-4 miles from my house that, if Amy and I went to grab a cup of coffee, they could ask us to leave simply because who we are. They could refuse to serve us. And so, there are over 40 municipalities here in Michigan that provide some form of protection in the way of a non-discrimination ordinance. But that patchwork system does not work. It leaves far too many people out. So again, if you work for a corporation that values diversity, equity, inclusion, as a worker, you will be provided protections. And if you live in a community that also values diversity, equity, inclusion, you will have those protections. But there's a lot of spaces within the map of Michigan where those protections just don't exist. And that's why we need to codify it into law by modernizing the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act.
So with that, Erin, how can people take part in your mission?
Absolutely. They can reach out to us. They can sign up on Facebook. They can contact myself and tell their story. Because as we've been talking about, it really is about changing hearts and minds. And it always surprises me that there are people that will still say, I don't know a member of the LGBTQ community. Well, yes, you do. It's your neighbor. It's your coworker. So we need people to be telling their stories. It's that storytelling that, again, changes hearts and minds and ultimately moves the needle. When I came to Kalamazoo 20 some years ago, I don't think that the polling would suggest that over 75% of Michiganders support our community, but we have polling now, and that is, it's 77% of Michiganders support amending the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to, again, explicitly include sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression.
Well, I want to say thank you for your work. I will say I remember my brother and brother-in-law live in Sterling Heights, and years ago we went to a city council meeting, and the hate that was directed and the misinformation was astounding. We were surprised. We were like, oh my gosh. And, I'm married to an African American, and it's to see like the difference in your community, and we need to all come together, and love is love. Love has no boundaries, and we need to recognize that. And one of the beautiful things is that by telling your story and being an advocate, you are changing people and you are changing hearts. But before we let you go, because I know we're running a little bit behind, I have to ask you, the Mr. Potato Head debate. Okay, can we just be a potato family?
It's just
So I don't have an opinion on Mr. Potato Head. I've been very busy these last couple of weeks fighting some discrimination here in the Southwest Michigan region. So I know that there's a story out there, but I can't speak to it.
Tyler wants to chime in on that.
Yeah,
He's like, that's a potato.
Yeah, I don't want to chime in on the potato head. So it's the dumbest debate, and I call it debate in quotations because it's just so incredibly stupid. I wanted to ask a question about something that's much more important, and for so many young people, sports in schools is a cornerstone of them growing up, and there's been a lot of debate lately, unfortunately, and a lot of hate that's been targeted at the trans community in particular regarding trans youth and teens playing sports in particular divisions, whether it be boys or girls sports. And I saw a really great quote yesterday from ESPN's Tony Real. He got in a Twitter shouting match with some jerk, and he responded by saying, "The trans community is our community. Trans athletes are us. For me, the purpose of youth sports is an incredible, long, and wholly life-affirming and enriching list. That needs to apply to all. Certainly are most in need of it, and that's the trans youth." And then continued on, "For young athletes, that means a lot, and for young trans athletes, I hope we can all understand it means a lot more. For me, that the last part is everything here." And there's been such a debate about whether or not a trans girl should be allowed to play youth sports in a girls sport, in girls basketball, girls softball, girls track. We saw yesterday's a debate that sparked from June Eastwood, who is a trans woman that won a Big Sky championship in track. What work has your organization been doing, if any, with the MHSAA to bridge those gaps and eliminate some of these discriminatory opinions or discriminatory practices that may be in place in youth sports to provide this cornerstone of growing up to people in the LGBTQ community, particularly in the trans community?
So, I mean, it's a lot of education and storytelling and pointing out, the misinformation that is out there. I shared an article on social media the other day that talked about it's not the trans athletes that are causing other student athletes harm. It's the predatory coaches, and we have an example within the the MSU gymnastics program.
Yes.
Let them play. And again, it's about connecting and dispelling some of these hateful and cruel myths and building support. But it also is, there are states nearby where anti-trans legislation is being introduced. And it's my job to work at the Capitol to make sure that lawmakers understand that if they're going to attempt to introduce anti-trans sports bills here in Michigan, they're going to hit a brick wall with opposition. Again, let the kids play. It builds confidence. It's as a former athlete myself, some of my best memories of my childhood was the experiences that I had playing softball and basketball. And, at the end of the day, that's what's at the heart of all of this. Let them play.
Erin, it's been so great having you with us. We so appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Please, anytime you have a new initiative that you want to share with us, you're always welcome back here on the MegaCast. Again, quickly, what is your Facebook and your social media sites for people to get involved?
I think just the quickest way was, I can't talk, Equality Michigan. Just go into Facebook or onto Twitter. equalitymi.org is our website, and you can find us there.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.